So this is an important thing when you're writing an essay. If you ever write a musicological essay, why are there so many fans inside my house? Go back into isolation. So when you're writing an essay, the things that you really want to be doing is taking evidence that either other people have written or that you have found. I've referenced an awful lot of newspaper clippings and stuff in Polish in my essay because there's so little written about Bacewicz musicologically in English. A little newspaper clipping I can get by, of musicological paper in Polish, nah. And we take these sources and then we use these to create our own argument. And we're kind of, at the end of the day, trying to make a point. So, how does gender affect her work in the workplace? Her work itself, the pieces she writes? How does this affect the genres that she wrote in? Concert music and salon music. We're going to start first by looking at gender under the Soviet rule. So there are three main reasons why women composers and women performers did not gain as much fame as their male counterparts in the Soviet era. These are the fear of denunciation, that they would get in trouble for not complying with socialist realism, not being taken seriously as a composer because they are a woman and therefore not getting any commissions and a lot of work, and 3, an obligation to stay at home and raise a family whilst the man goes out and earns the money, regardless of how much training they had. An example of a women composer who feared denunciation under the Soviet rule was Zara Lavina. So Zara Lavina didn't write an awful lot of music. She studied in Odessa and mainly throughout her life dedicated her work to writing children's songs and marches. However, one of her earlier pieces that did give her the fame and respect that she needed was her piano concerto. It's very Rachmaninoff and Scriabin-esque, but has this wonderful, sensitive quality, as well as the virtuosity of any of the great composers. The piece was premiered during her lifetime shortly after it was written, but the authority said, yeah, that's great, so we're going to commission you to write children's music, and she didn't really fight this. She saw what was happening to the composers around her. Shostakovich was the main one, along with Prokofiev, who pushed orchestral music and who wrote and sounded sad, basically, and said, I'm having an awful time. And because she saw the trouble that they were having, she didn't really fight or stand her ground. She remained in the world of children's music. And this is not to say that children's music is a realm that has no standing, that is not a proper piece of music, because it is. However, she didn't really delve into any more orchestral music, she didn't write any symphonies, it's unknown whether she was commissioned of any and turned them down, or whether she just didn't get them in the first place. And this was until the very end of her life, where, with chronic heart disease, knowing she was going to die, she wrote a second piano concerto. This was not premiered in her lifetime. She wrote it, kept it in her drawer, and never heard it. However, it has since been recorded and premiered, and it is an astonishing work, particularly if you compare the two concertos. The first one, it's very post-romantic, it's like, yeah, we're rolling with this, like, woo, piano concertos, and then this one, very dark, very sad. You can see why she kept it in the drawer for the remainder of her life. Even though this was later, after Stalin had died, socialist realism was still looming over composers. It was still great tension that they had, and that's why she kept it in the drawer, to keep herself and her family safe from any kind of trouble it may have caused. Another example is a very interesting one indeed, and that is Nina Makarova. She was the wife of Aram Khachaturian. They met whilst at university, both studying composition together, and quickly got married. This is a great example because these two have had the same amount of training, yet one was given significantly more opportunity to succeed than the other. Can we guess who it was? Khachaturian was one of the forefront composers in the Composers Union. This was a group of composers and artists who kind of controlled the socialist realism, and everyone who wrote a piece had to go through them in order to get their work premiered. This was not necessarily a job that he liked. The government would bestow a job on someone saying, we believe you're good at this and we think you should do it, and you don't say no to the Soviet government. This is a position that they never would have dreamed of giving to a woman. There is a very dense book on economics by Katerina Katz called Gender, Work and Wages in the Soviet Union. Here she looks at all of the tables of who earned what, was it fair? Because if you remember, one of the points of the government was everyone gets fair pay. Everything's fair, everyone's equal, and this was a complete facade. If you have a family where the man is earning so much more than the woman because he's getting paid that much more, does it really make sense for the man to say, you know what, we want a family, we're going to have children, how about I stay at home and you keep working? It's more of a practical thing. So Makarova in the end retired from composition. She wrote a few bits and bobs, there was many harp pieces for a friend of hers, but her career as a concert music composer was relatively short-lived. She did, however, write 2 pieces for violin and orchestra, which are absolutely lovely, along with a symphony, which is one of these typically commissioned grand symphonies of praise how great Russia is. One of the rare examples of one of these works by a woman. Amazingly, I actually found a photo of Bacewicz with Nina Makarova and Aram Khachaturian. They're having a bit of a chat here, they're having a laugh. I don't know who the other lady is, but yeah, I think that's really cool. An interview with 2 women composers from Russia who lived a little bit later in the century, Sofia Gabardolina and Elena Fersova, was conducted by Claire Pollin in 1984. Here the 2 composers are discussing the lack of opportunities that women get compared to men in this fair environment. Fersova says, Soviet life favours the man as everywhere, except for unmarried women and those without children, yet there seems to be almost equal number of women in the arts here. Gabardolina then replies, yes, but are they equally respected as composers? Doesn't it depend on the quality of their work? Men work at music as a business, but women have to create their own publicity to be recognised. Not only is the lack of opportunity a great pressure under women who are writing at this time, but also in terms of finances, women earned a significant amount less. Fersova claimed in the year that this interview was taken that 65% of her earnings were taken by the government, along with 35% of her commission fees. The lack of opportunity and financial pressure was very clearly felt by Bacewicz. She says many times she didn't actually like performing. She was an incredible violinist. She was a leader of one of the biggest orchestras in Poland, but she didn't like it. She said she'd give anything to just have the time to be a composer. She says, I play because that's what keeps me money in Poland, but I really would rather earn less and care less and sit at home and stick to my composing. That's my dream. Bacewicz frequently performed in other European countries and an awful lot in Paris, where she used to live. One of the true testimonies to her character was a concert series that she ran in Paris, where she played her own work and also the work of others. Gave her so much financial profit that she donated 10,000 francs to the rebuilding of the Warsaw Philharmonic Concert Hall. Now this was a lot of money back then as well. So think about, she could have kept this for herself, her house was entirely destroyed in the war, she could have not played as much, she could have saved that money, spent more time composing, but she didn't. And this is another one of the reasons why she is so vital to the legacy of Polish music. The concert hall exists because she donated that money. Although I'm sure it would have existed, but it would have taken them a lot longer to rebuild it.